Speaking of a new strategic era, it's not just about military realignment, it's also about diplomatic changes, about old allies drifting apart and new friendships popping up, like in Latin America. After the 1950s, it was basically a CIA playground. They carried out 34 coup attempts in 12 countries, 34. But this is 2023, and things have changed. Latin America is a lot more confident and assertive. Let me give you some examples. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is currently touring Latin America. His first stop was Brazil. Their president, Lula da Silva, has a taste for foreign policy. He hasn't joined Western sanctions against Russia, neither has he sent weapons to Ukraine, but on Monday he made an interesting statement. Lula blamed the US and Europe for extending the war. Listen to this.
Getting peace there is very difficult. President Putin does not take the initiative to stop. Ukrainian President Zelensky does not take the initiative to stop. Europe and the United States contribute to the continuation of this war.
The response was swift. Washington accused Lula of parroting Russian and Chinese propaganda. For Lula, it was a big statement to make because Brazil is a major non-NATO ally of the US. Bilateral trade is worth over $100 billion. So Washington's criticism unsettled Lula. The very next day, he condemned the Russian invasion of Ukraine. At the same time, he reiterated his peace offer. So that's one US ally acting a bit shaky. The second is Mexico. Their president is openly accusing the Pentagon of spying. Listen to this.
Then we also have to take care of our information for the sake of national security. I made this decision. No, we are now going to safeguard information from the Navy and the Defense Ministry because we are being a target of spying by the Pentagon.
Quick context. The Mexican president was talking about the Pentagon leaks. They mentioned military tensions between Mexico's Navy and the US Army. Whatever the reason, the outcome is bad for Washington. Mexico is their largest trading partner in the region. Total trade, more than $600 billion. Not to mention the porous border between them. Now, both these examples should raise alarm bells in Washington. They threaten one of the cornerstones of US policy. It's called the Monroe Doctrine. What does this policy say? That the US must have total domination over the Western Hemisphere. No other power should be allowed to enter. The first target of this policy was European powers, but not anymore. The new threat is China and Russia. As always, it's the money that's making the moves. In the year 2000, China's trade with Latin America was $12 billion. Now, $430 billion. It is the region's second largest trading partner overall, and first in countries like Argentina, Brazil, and Venezuela. China is their biggest trading partner. And don't forget the loans. China has lent $140 billion to Latin America. In exchange, they got access to oil. These numbers cannot be dismissed as random. They reflect a change in US attitude. For decades, they took Latin America for granted. All the coups, all the so-called wars on drugs, all the relentless lecturing. Surely it had to backfire at some point. So naturally, Latin American nations are exploring their options. Last year, Joe Biden hosted the Summit of Americas. Leaders from Mexico, Cuba, and Venezuela did not attend. He got a second embarrassment last month. President Lula of Brazil skipped his Summit for Democracy. So the message to Washington seems quite clear. This isn't the 1950s anymore. But does that mean Latin America is cozying up to China or Russia? Well, not necessarily. This shift is more about neutrality than picking sides. It's about making the most of the emerging order. An example of that is Argentina. Reports say they're interested in joining the BRICS. It would mess up the acronym, but that's the rumor. Going forward, the Monroe Doctrine is likely to get weaker. America faces a similar challenge in West Asia, but there, US military assistance remains unrivaled. That's not the case in Latin America. Such a shift may not happen overnight, but it's certainly in the works.
It's about time Latin America stood up and became more confident and assertive. It's time we break away from the toxic relationship with the US, who has done nothing but take advantage of Latin America and Latin Americans. For decades, the US has treated Latin America like its own personal playground that's to be taken lightly. It's about time Latin America engages with better partners to do trade and business with. Fostering better relationships with foreign interests is the future for Latin America's growth and expansion. But as always, to my Latin American audience, what are your thoughts?